What's up guys, welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we're going to cover some of the best champions for the Doom Tower, normal and hard. I'm not going to touch the secret rooms yet because I haven't even started on that. We're going to update the spreadsheet also at some point, but for the time being, I want to sort of cover the champions that I've been seeing everywhere, being used and reused. And so, like I said before, we're not reinventing Raid here. We're going to keep using the same enemy max HP champions. We're going to use AoE, decrease defense, and weaken like we always have. We're going to use sort of like the revivers that we always have used before. So again, I want to highlight some of these champions, but also some of the more accessible ones at the same time. Let's start with the so-called revivers. I think that obviously Arbiter will continue to shine for this. She's one of the most accessible. So if you don't have Arbiter, or even if you perhaps need two revive champions, you can always work with Sile the Drakes as well. I have used both of them so far in some of my attempts to complete some of the boss stages on hard, so they are definitely usable. We also have the Reliquary Tender, right, which is one of the rare accessible versions, although it's only a single target revive. Maybe early on in the normal tower this can be good enough for you guys, but we also have a remove all debuffs on this, so she acts as a cleanser at the same time. Really interesting. Then let's cover the all the enemy max HP champions. There's four major ones, Septimus probably being the best one right now. I pulled one not too long ago, allowed me to do faster spider runs, but also is now very useful for the Doom Tower. I will quickly say though that if you want to gear this guy and use him against Borgoth, you might want to consider putting a destroy set on him right away, or at least one of the destroy sets that you're going to build. Make sure it works for this guy. Then we also have Royal Guard. Now this guy, obviously well known, AoE enemy max HP, one of the best in the game. We continue to use him a whole lot, but I'll also mention that if you saw my recent Nether Spider on auto team, he's in there because we have a decreased defense on the A1 as well as the hamstring skill, which will do a lot of turn meter reduction. So he's pretty interesting on auto against the Nether Spider as well, not just for clearing waves or the bosses. So like he can work on auto, even though I think most of us probably use him on manual. Then we also have, of course, the one and only Coldheart. I don't even really need to spend too much time on her. Enemy max HP with 100% turn meter reduction. The best in the game, literally the best in the game for that specific skill. Then we also have our trusty Armiger in destroy set now as well, because you're going to use him against Borgoth, which I have now two built, and I think the now best in slot gear for him is destroy sets. So do pay attention that if you're going to gear him for the first time, don't go for relentless. That will not work on Borgoth. You got to put this guy in a destroy set. Then there is one more. She's a little bit different. I haven't been using her for the bosses, but she continues to be extremely good. In fact, she has been carrying me for hard tower all the stages except the boss stages, and that is because of the Karma Burn skill from Seer. I mean, if you look at my team that I have right now, that's basically what I have. It is Seer being used across the board for all the stages, regardless of the team comps. This always work. This team is scalable all the way to the end. If anything, what I'm going to be missing on my Seer currently is more accuracy. But aside from that, this team has had no issues. It has failed once or twice. I just keep retrying until it works. I might even do manual here and there once in a while, but overall this team keeps working, and that is because of Seer. And of course, if you want your Seer to work really good, you got to get a lot of buffs on your side. So we do have Sifi for that, which is probably, you know, the best on that front because of this skill right here. But if you don't have Sifi, also a Reviver, which is obviously pretty good, you're going to use the, also in the Undead, sorry, it is the Mausoleum Mage, okay? So that's the one that I am using. This skill is amazing. We also have a Cleanser at the same time, a heal. So this is really solid. Mine is built for Tag Arena in very high resistance. I'm going to say if you want to also use him for all the way to the end of Doom Tower, you're going to need like 400 plus resistance. Therefore, currently geared as is for me, it is working perfectly in a shield set. I really love this champion. I could also quickly mention the Spirit Host, right? If you're just starting out, if you want a champion to remove some debuffs, then you can use Spirit Host. She's really good. She's farmable. She also has the 50% increased attack. I'm guessing you have a Spirit Host by now, right? Let's keep going with the next one. Let's cover the AoE, decrease defense, and weaken. So obviously Lydia is the first one that comes to mind because I have her. I'm now end game. If you don't have Lydia, there are other options, but nobody does it as well as she does. And combine that also with the Seer, that's two more buffs for me to work with. That is amazing. Okay, so the next one I guess I could mention for that is Dracomorph. Not exactly accessible, but AoE decrease defense and weaken on a 3-turn cooldown. That's the important part here as well. You have Venus as well. You have Rosin that could do it as well, but that is single target, so it's a little bit tougher to work with, but he's still very useful. I have used him as well in some of my teams, and it worked out pretty good, especially against Borgoth. He'll also do his bog down skill against Borgoth to control that turn meter, so that is really, really nice. If you don't have those two, then of course you can work with the usual. Guys, they're still going to be used a whole lot. You have Stag Knight, AoE decrease defense and decrease attack, right, on a 3-turn cooldown. And of course, if you don't have that one, then you're going to work with the War Maiden. So she continues to be pretty useful. I'm pretty sure I can eventually make it work with just the War Maiden. I'm not even going to need the Weaken on top of it. So if you're, again, if you're just starting out or on normal tower, she is your go-to. Then we're going to do the ultimate turn meter control champion, and I think this is Allure. We know she's great, but she's being used quite a bit recently. In fact, I even did an auto team for the Nether Spider with Allure, even though the more turn meter reduction you do, the more damage you take. If you have revivers, that is no problem. So she is amazing for this. Even used her for the Borgoth, so one of the best. But I'll quickly give a mention though, if you don't have Allure, one of the champions that I did use for turn meter control, amongst others, is Haikatoon. I think she's very underrated, but she is awesome for Borgoth. Really, really solid, because we have the decreased speed on the A1, we have a turn meter increase speed, but we also have a turn meter reduction on the A3 and a speed aura. So she deserves to be used for the Doom Tower, at least in my opinion. Then we have, of course, one of like the universal all-around champion. It is Krisk. We have the Provoke, which is good for the the Magma Dragon, but also the decreased defense and decreased attack, although you need to be attacked for this to work. We also have the shield for Borgoth, so like obviously this guy is, you know, is a must. If you have him, you're going to use him, but most people don't have a Krisk, so I thought I would quickly mention him. Now we're going to move on to a little bit more of the specialty champions, the ones that are currently being used a whole lot because they're good for one specific thing. I say one specific thing, obviously it's not exactly just one, but like Ithos, for example, our ultimate AoE nuker for both the waves to the bosses. I mean, he's the best at what he does. You don't need decreased defense weaken, you don't need the increased attack. This guy is strong enough with good gear to go there, nuke the waves, and then you get to the boss within a couple seconds, right? If you do not have Ithos, however, I will quickly mention Abyss. Abyss also has 2 AoEs. One even has a decreased defense, which is kind of nice. But if you just want to get a champion that does the same job as an Ithos, Abyss is one of them. If you don't have her, you of course have the one and only Skull Crown, which I don't have. Maybe one day I will. But apparently you need a lot better gear to pull this off on the hard tower. And I'll give an honorable mention as well to our one and only Zargala, because she does technically have 2 AoEs, which is Crack Armor, but then her A2, if it kills a champion, you can then do the A3, right, or it triggers the A3. So I've been trying to wonder if I can somehow gear her to pull off sort of like what Ithos does, but I'm thinking I'm never going to hit the right amount of attack and crit rate and crit damage. Maybe put her in an affinity breaker set as well so that you don't encounter weak hits, but it's a long shot, really, really long shot, so I'm probably just going to stick with what I'm using right now. Then let's move on to our shield champions, right? We now need a lot of shields for specifically Borgoth. We have Vergumkar. I have used him. I did max him out, but the problem is that it's still on a 3-turn cooldown. So the ultimate right now for the shield is apparently Metal Shaper, because it's on a 2-turn cooldown. The problem with that though is that it is super small, therefore if you get hit anyway by Borgoth, he's going to strip that shield and then you're out of shield. So I found the best right now is to combine 2. So I have Metal Shaper plus Vergumkar for my auto Borgoth team. We do also have a couple more that can do the shield. For example, our trusty Valerie, which we can farm. The problem is that her shield is very long. It's a 5-turn cooldown. Even if you can extend the one that's there from the beginning, you will at one point run out, so it's not quite enough. But then we also have, what's his name? I believe he's in the Sacred Order. His name is the new guy, Draconis. His shield is on a 3-turn cooldown. So that's already a little bit better, but to be honest, Metal Shaper is probably a little bit more accessible and has worked out just fine for me. Then a couple more sort of like specialty champions here. Let's go over the Richoff the Bold, because this guy has enemy max HP reduction on the A1. We also even see him in the showcase from raid when doing Borgoth. Okay, so if you have this guy, most likely will be used against Borgoth. Plus, he's the strong affinity for this, so he's kind of perfect for the job, right? Then we're gonna have Provoke for the Magma Dragon. So the one that I have been using, or that I plan on using a little bit more, it's not going to be, sorry, an undead. It is going to be in the demon spawn, and it is our trusty Umbral Enchantress, because we have a 2-turn Provoke on a 5-turn cooldown. Relatively long, but you can work with this. I've been using her for crowd control in all the stages between the bosses, and it's working perfectly. We also have block buffs. She's void if you give her enough accuracy. This is a ton of control. I have her in a frost set right now. Maybe not the best, but I think it's working out just fine. Of course, you could also use the Tormund if you have him. I do, but I'm not using him simply because it's not a guaranteed form of crowd control, and right now I want sort of like things that I can count on for those all those waves, right? But Tormund, obviously a very honorable mention. And of course, you have the really accessible ones like what's his name, Gnarlhorn, I believe, in the Skinwalkers down here. Okay, so this guy has a Provoke. It is only 1 turn, but it's on a 3-turn cooldown. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough to control the Magma Dragon. So again, if you're just starting out, you can work with this guy. I think there's even one more farmable, this guy, Greybeard. That's right, Provoke on the A1, but we also have an AoE freeze. So if you want some crowd control at the same time, that is kind of nice. And he self-counter attacks, therefore you can keep applying the Provoke. That is definitely useful, but don't underestimate to just use the set, right? The taunt set, you can always, you know, get away with using that. And then we're going to cover real quick the HP burn, which is the last thing I'll mention. The one that I have been using, this is specifically for Sorath, is the gimme that we had for the orcs here. It is Ultimate Gaelic. Not just because the HP burn, but because we have an AoE turn meter reduction on top of that, which is 20%. We also have a good turn meter reduction on the A2. It's single target, but also HP burn there. And then we have sort of like turn meter increase on the A1. Okay, so this guy is pretty much built for that. I have been using him. Some people have said you don't even need HP burn for Sorath. It's true. You can kill her without if you have block revive, but it reduces her stats. So might as well try to build right away with HP burn because it's going to be harder in the long run. So I would suggest you kind of try to work it in right away. If you don't have this guy, you can always work with Bulwark, which we have right here, Void Defense. Okay, so he has the HP burn. I'm using my Bulwark on Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss. He's already built. I might put him in there if I feel I need a champion that has lifesteal compared to my Ultimate Gaelic, which is kind of built as a nuker at the same time, full savage, right? And then the final one I'll mention as well for HP burn, you have Coffin Smasher, and he is right here. Okay, so also usually build for the Clan Boss. You have a decreased attack on the A1. That's always useful for any boss you face. So overall, that's pretty much it, guys. I know it was a lot of champions to cover real quick, and it gives you sort of an overview of what's sort of like best in slot, and also sort of like what you can use for the time being. But then let me here quickly show you guys sort of like the best teams and what I mean by these are the champions being used and reused. For instance, this team right here, we have the Septimus, the Ithos, we have decreased defense and weaken. I didn't mention Spider, but he's a great option as well. You have Gurtuk here because he adds damage, but if you don't have quite enough damage with your main 2 nukers, just use like a Renegade to reset the skills of your Septimus, and then maybe that's going to be enough if you can ensure that you go twice before the boss. We quickly mentioned Venus. I suppose Renegade, if you don't have her, you have the better version. It's Prince Kaimar. That could be great as well. But aside from that, it's basically all the champions that I mentioned so far. Same thing with the previous bosses here. We have best teams. We've got, for this one, again, Septimus, Lydia, Abbess, Prince Kaimar. So I suppose Prince Kaimar is a good mention as well, resetting the skills. He's the best. But I've been using Renegade, and that's what I used for my recent Nether Spider team. I went with the Renegade, okay? So you don't necessarily need Prince Kaimar, but you guys kind of see what I mean, okay? These are the best champions that are currently being used for Doom Tower on hard, and like I said, if it works on hard, it's going to work on normal, and even though we're just halfway through, I'm thinking at this point, we have the champions, we just need better gear. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys later.